Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to be ranking Season 15 of Doctor Who from worst to best. So this is, of course, a Tom Baker season, the first season with Graham Williams as the producer, and it does feel like a mismatch of stories in the sense that some of the stories do feel tonally like leftovers from the Hinchcliffe era, while some of them are very much going in a new direction. So you get a wide variety of tone in this season from the different stories. We have 6 stories to go through, and at the bottom of the list is the one I've watched most recently, which is The Invisible Enemy. The Invisible Enemy isn't necessarily bad. It's just very uninteresting. I think really, other than being notable as being K9's first story, there's not a lot going on in it. It wasn't bad. It's not really good. It's just, as I mentioned in my review, it's just kind of there. It's just kind of, It's just one of those you'd go back and rewatch every blue moon. Tom Baker's good in it. K9 is good in it. Leela's hit or miss in it. And the guy who invented K9, I really liked him a lot in it. But just, I don't know, I found it a bit boring overall. I can forgive a lot of things, but I can't really forgive a story being boring. It's certainly watchable, but it's just one of those, you go back every now and then and rewatch. And that's pretty much it. Like, all 4 episodes are just kind of there. Number 5 on the list for me would be The Invasion of Time. This really is more because of the budget. I mean, the story is fine. I mean, Gallifrey kind of being invaded twice seems a little much, but it's a good fake out to take away the real, to surprise you with the real threat of the Sontarans showing up, because in Classic Who, the Sontarans were a legitimate threat. And the cliffhanger when they first show up at the end of, what is it, episode 4, I forget which episode it is a good cliffhanger when you just see him pull out that weapon. That is a good cliffhanger. The rushed ending for Leela, forcing her off, marrying her off, is really bad. It's very out of character for Leela. She hasn't really spent much time with this captain she's supposedly in love with. It's very rushed. I mean, it feels rushed because it was rushed. And it feels very out of place for her as a character. And she really deserved better as a character, a better send-off. It's very much a throwback to those 60s companion departures that weren't really done well, like Dodo and Ben and Polly's. And so that's disappointing. But mostly it really is the special effects. The creatures that invade originally with the tinsel just look awful. They're realized badly. And of course, those TARDIS interior shots, which I believe that was filmed at a hospital, are just unforgivable. Like, unforgivable. I mean, I get it's classic Doctor Who. Classic Doctor Who is always done on a budget, so there's always a certain amount of suspension of disbelief you have to, observe when watching classic Doctor Who. That's just, you know what you're getting into, classic Doctor Who. But there are those stories where it's so bad, it strains even that suspension of disbelief, even for classic Who fans. And which stories do that is going to vary from person to person. But this is one of those where the lack of budget is so blatantly obvious that it makes it hard even for me to sit all the way through it. Now, I haven't watched it in a long time, and I've never seen the updated effects for it. I've seen the updated effects in a YouTube video. It's just a collection of them, but I've never watched it in story. So now when the box set comes out and I can actually watch it with the updated effects, maybe I'll appreciate it more. We'll see. But right now it kind of sits low on the list. It's probably my least favorite season finale for Tom, honestly. Number 4 on the list is Underworld. Underworld, I think, is underrated. Yes, the CSO is bad in places, especially, I think it was episode 3. Episode 2, the CSO wasn't as bad. In episode 4, it wasn't as bothersome. Episode 3, it's really bad. There's a lot of static shots. It's like the director just gave up in episode 3 before getting back on it in episode 4. Episode 3, the CSO is bad. The story is fine. I enjoyed the story. It drags a little bit in the middle with episodes 2 and 3. Episodes 1 and 4 really are the standouts. The bookend episodes really help this story. 1, the model work is phenomenally good in Underworld. That's the reason why I know a lot of people argue that Underworld needs updated effects. I don't think that. I think it needs CSO cleanup. But I think the effects work really well. The model work is probably some of the best in Classic Who, especially since it's used very predominantly in episodes 1 and 4. That they look really good. I have to give my hats off to the model work for Underworld. It's really good. And I like the laser effects. That really weird green-looking laser effect when they shoot the lasers looks really, really sci-fi and really alien. I actually like how they did the laser shots. Plus, I love the idea of a laser shield, the idea that you can use a weapon to shoot lasers and also block lasers with it. That's a really neat idea just on its own, the idea of a laser blaster with a shield, so you can not only shoot, but you can, excuse me, block as well and reflect lasers. I like that as an idea. I think Tom is fine in it. I think Leela's good in it. And I think the guest cast are really good in it. I think the guest cast really helped make it. And I like the story of, this kind of sci-fi Jason and the Argonauts. And them kind of regenerating and healing themselves and having lived so long, trying to find this mythical ship. I enjoy it. I think Underworld is underrated. But episodes 2 and 3 are definitely the weak parts of the story. Whereas 1 and 4 are the strong parts of the story. Number 3 on the list is Image of the Fendal. I haven't watched this one in a while. I've talked about how season 15 is famously one I don't own a lot of. I do a little more now that I have the Region 2 player. I have the Region 1 copy of the Sunmakers I've had for a long time. But I do also own Underworld and Invisible Enemy now, so I do own half of it, of the season. But I haven't watched Image in a long time, and I think I've only seen Image once or twice, but I think once. I haven't seen Image a lot. Once or twice. And it needs a rewatch. I liked it. I've talked before about it, how my main gripe is just the realization of the Fendal's final form is a bit lacking with her just painted in gold. And I always hate when they paint on the eyes. That always looks weird to me. It's the same problem with Keeper of Traken in a couple scenes with the painted on eyes. Painted on eyes just never worked for me. And so the little creature behind her looks a little weird too in Image of the Fendal. But the story's good. It's very much has that Hinchcliffe horror feel to it. The location work looks good. I love the concept of the Fendal, and how it survives and lives, and how it can possess people and basically take possession of them and take them over. It's a really cool story idea that's realized mostly well, but not 100% well, like 90% well. Just the Fendal's final form needed to be better, and this would probably be in the number 2 slot. But it's very much a great season, a story that feels like it belongs in the Hinchcliffe era. Number 2 for me is the Sunmakers. I really like the Sunmakers. It's Bob Holmes. I tend to love Bob Holmes. It's great satire. I think I would struggle watching it a little more now, just because the 2020s have been such a crazy time. Really, the past 7 or 8 years have been just weird, but especially the 2020s, to where I think it's hard to do satire now because the real world is such a crazy, ridiculous place today. And when if I watched the Sunmakers now, I'd probably just be like, hey, this is like living in America in 2023. With inflation being so ridiculous the past couple years, taxes being so ridiculous. And matter of fact, I think inflation in Britain was actually worse than it was here in America in 2022. So I know you guys over across the pond in Britain are feeling the pain of just inflation run amok. Example, the apartment me and a friend of mine lived in from 2015 to 2017. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. Keep in mind, I'm in Mississippi here. So rent's not as high as it is, like, say, in New York or something. But our 2-bedroom apartment was $875 a month. Those same 2-bedroom apartments now, you know, just 6, 7 years later, are over $1,300 a month. So in a 6 or 7 year period, you went from $875 a month to over $1,300 a month. It is ridiculous. And more, I feel like I'm living in the Sunmaker with just ridiculous cost, ridiculous prices, ridiculous taxes. You know, it kind of reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where the people are trying to make the Radioactive Man movie and they just keep making up ridiculous taxes. Oh, there's also a $1,000 leaving town tax. That's where I feel like I live now. More and more, I get why the guy was about to jump off the building. And so I love the Sunmakers when I was growing up, but it's so much harder to do satire in 2023 when the real world is as ridiculous as it is. And so me ranking it this high is more based on the nostalgia of it, because I very much used to love going through and watching the Sunmakers, but I have a feeling if I watched it now, it would be hard to get to. I just feel like it's hard to do satire when the real world is in such a hard place right now and has been for the past few years. But at the time when I was watching it, even just, you know, in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, the mid 2010s, I very much enjoyed it. I thought Bob Holmes was very clever, and I can understand him being angry with his tax man. And number one on the list is, of course, well, number one has to be number one for a couple reasons. If you see like a red dot anywhere on me, that's probably Ham aiming a sniper rifle through the window, just in case I didn't pick this at number one. Because I have a feeling if I had picked anything else at number one, he would have words and bullets for me. But honestly, it has to be Horror of Fang Rock. Horror of Fang Rock is just, it's classic Doctor Who. It's a phenomenally good story. It very much feels like it belongs in the Hinchcliffe era. It's a great story. Uncle Terrence does an amazing job with it. Tom Baker is just on fire in it. I enjoy Leela in it. I love, it's directed well, it's written well. The guest cast all do really well. Although the one woman in it, the other woman drives me nuts. But that's kind of the point of her character. But when she got killed off, I was like, it's very much, again, a reminder that people in, you know, Doctor Who die. You know, he's not like the guy who saves everybody. He can't save everybody. You know, this is one where, of course, famously all the guest cast die. But I like it. The guy who plays the kind of older fisherman, I think he's also an enemy of the world. He's really good playing not only the older fisherman, but later when he's the Rutan disguised as the older fisherman, he does a really good job playing both of those dual roles. I really enjoy seeing the Rutans finally, because they're the Centaurans, you know, main enemy. And the fact they have a very non-humanoid look. And it's also got some, you know, classic dialogue in it, like the, you know, I thought I locked it out, but I've locked it in with us. Yeah, it's such a great bit of dialogue. And then the glowing green light is just so creepy and eerie. It really is horror done right. Definitely one of Doctor Who's best horror-themed stories, and easily the best story of season 15. It is the masterpiece of season 15, and easily one of the best post-Hinchcliffe era Fourth Doctor stories as well. So I'd like to know what you think of these stories and how you would rank them. So comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to support what I do. There's a link to that down in the description below as well. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Finn Perkins, Colin Coney, and Stephen Crane. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review. I definitely appreciate Simon sending me a copy of The Invisible Enemy recently so I could watch it, and JLBWHO, who sent me a copy of Underworld. So I got to watch that again for the first time in a while. I'd only seen it once before, so I enjoyed that. I also have a link to my Amazon wish list down there as well, so don't forget to check that out. Most importantly, though, Thank you for watching.